Back. This is Lauren Kimball with ANI 150, and we're going to continue on working with the Sci-Fi crate, this time laying out the UV maps. Now in the last tutorial I showed you a quicker method for fencing in your mesh using the bevel tool, and I went ahead and turned that group off, so our crate high 2.0 group is off and my crate low group is turned on. Next, I'm going to go over to the top right-hand corner of my screen, and I'm going to go from Maya Classic down to UV editing. I just like this layout. I like that you have a split screen now with your viewport, your main perspective camera, your UV texture editor, and over here, well, it's the attribute editor, but if you look at the top tabs, they have the UV toolkit as one of the options. So UV toolkit right there. Open window and UV texture editor. Now in the UV texture editor with the whole group selected, it's just a real hot mess of UV maps there. Let's go ahead and do this one section at a time. I'm going to press Control A, and if I press it twice, well, one, it's going to display the attribute editor, which we can go back to with the UV toolkit. It also activates the channel box. And the channel box in this particular view is just floating. I don't need to dock it anywhere. I can just hide it as soon as I'm done. I'm going to go ahead and turn off the handles, the strap, the buckles, and the top box. And I'm going to focus on the main crate. Alright, so in our previous tutorials with really simple objects like the food can and the dice, we used automatic mapping, which allowed you to project 6 different planar maps being the flat plane maps over an object. The cylindrical map would allow you to wrap around an object. We could technically go to create and use automatic mapping. Oops, make sure that I am in object mode before doing that. So I could go in and create an automatic map. What is going on? Something Maya does not like. Create automatic. Oh, there it goes. How interesting. I could just create an automatic map and start with this. You know, I mean, this isn't a terrible way to start off, but I prefer to have my UVs more organized than this. So I'm going to actually lay these out differently than just laying them out in one texture space, and I'm going to organize it so I know where everything is and what everything is. That doesn't mean I necessarily want to throw everything out. If I go to UV shell, these 2 lines here represent the inner parts of this crate, and I kind of like those. I kind of want to keep that. I don't mind how that was laid out. Let's see, I suspect these bits right here probably make up, oh, looks like they make up a lot of things. Kind of want to see how it decided to lay out the UVs on this center section here. Let's go ahead and double click. So if I press 4, you can see that I've selected this inner edge loop of faces, and it looks like it's all these bits right here. So that just saves me some time on some things that I don't necessarily have to unpack or deal with. So I'm going to set those aside. I'm not worried about packing at this point. We'll get to packing at a later time. Right now I'm just interested in laying out my UVs and figuring out where everything is, you know, as a way to mitigate seams. So I'm going to take what's left over here, this UV shell. I'm going to grab it, and I'm going to go ahead and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and create a camera-based view. I could do normal-based view as well, but for some reason when I've been activating the normal-based view, it hasn't been working, which is different. It used to work very well in 2021, but in Maya 2022 there seems to be an error that I'm going to have to fuss out later. For now, I'm just going to go to create and do camera-based, which is very similar to normal-based. Basically, these types of maps, automatic, camera, normal, well actually not automatic, but camera and normal maps, they are creating one solid shell out of your selection. Now clearly this is not going to be one solid shell, it's going to be 2. And the reason it's 2 is because we have chopped these out. We took these shells that represent the inside lip, under lip of this crate, and we just set them aside for now. This is not, by the way, just as a reminder, this is not how we're going to be packing everything. It's not just going to be loosey-goosey up top. We are going to be very methodical with how we pack our crate, how to pack those UVs. But for right now, I'm just using this space like a giant chopping board and just setting things willy-nilly. So I'm going to go over here and grab the top of my crate, lift it off, there we go, and I've got the inside portion. And I can think about, just kind of look at this and think about how I want to go about chopping things up. And let's see, how about we begin by just taking off the top, like the very top plane. So I'm going to go to face selection, click on one of the portions of the top of my crate. I'm going to press Q, which takes away my move tool, and I'm going to hold down shift and I'm going to double click across the top of that crate. Okay? And actually I didn't have to do that. I don't know why I went that direction. I actually want to grab the edge loop around the crate. I don't know why I grabbed the faces. So I'm just going to wrap around and grab these edges. That was really strange. I don't know where I was going with that. I mean, I guess maybe I could have made a planar map of that, and that would have been fine, but using this method, I like this better. So I'm going to grab the edges along the top of this, and I'm going to go make sure that I'm in my UV editor. So I'm not in my perspective view. I've moved a little, I've zoomed in a little in here. And I'm going to press Shift X. Now notice when I press Shift X that this white, the section that I had highlighted became a little bolder. If I click off of it, you can now see that there's a white line around where I had selected the edge. And what that white line represents is a cut in the UV shells. Now, if I'm right-clicking and I grab UV shell, I have three pieces here. So now I have the top, I have the middle, and I have the bottom of my crate. Now, I'm going to go to the bottom of my crate next, and I'm going to go down here and I'm going to right click, grab the edge, and I'm going to do a similar thing where I'm just grabbing these outside edges. So I can grab here, hold down shift, double click. Now you don't have to have your move tool on, you can actually press Q and just have a basic select tool without any sort of translate, rotate, or scale. So next I'm going to click shift here, shift, click, and double click. So I'm actually holding shift the entire time. So when you hold down shift, it allows you to select more than one edge. We covered this in class, but it bears repeating. If I just clicked an edge without holding down shift, then I would only be selecting the one edge. But if I hold down shift, I can click and select whole edge loops. Now if I accidentally grab an edge I didn't intend to, I can hold down control and click that edge and it will deselect. So shift allows you to grab multiple edges, control allows you to let go. And I can press 4 in my keyboard for wire view and make sure that that's all that I have selected. Anything else that I have selected would be in orange. I could also count my edges if I felt so inclined, so that I could make sure that what I have selected, which is 16, is exactly the edge count I need, but that's a little bit much. We don't have to go that far. All right, I'm going to go over here and I'm just going to move my camera a little in the UV editor view, and I'm going to press Shift X, and that is going to snip the bottom of this crate. I'm going to right click and activate UV shells. Click on the UV shell. It doesn't matter which view you're in for selecting the UV shells. Once you have UV shell selected, you can select them in either view. Press the move tool and move this down. All right. Now I'm going to take all of these shells and move them over a smidgen, and the reason is because I'm going to show you how I plan to lay out the UVs based on a part that I've cut. We're going to have to do a little bit more trimming on these two, but this top one, it's pretty much ready to be laid out. So there's a couple of really cool tools you should know about. One of them is the unfold and the other one is layout. So unfold is easy to access. You just press Control U. And when I press Control U, it lays out my UVs quite nicely. In fact, if I were to go over here to my shaded view, I can see that everything's nice and blue. I can click on my distortion map and I can see everything's white, which is ideal because when there's white, that means there's no stretching or pulling on my UVs. Everything's looking pretty good. So it's a little crooked though. So this is where my UV toolkit comes in. So I can go ahead and just collapse my transform and my, so if I, and my arrange and layout, which I already had open over here. This is what it looks like when you have all your menus collapsed. And the one I'm going to click on is arrange and layout. And you'll see that there's a button that says orient shells. So I'm going to click on that. And when I click orient shells, it tries to orient the shell along the UVs. The U and V coordinates as best it can. So in this case, it led to an up and right view of my map, and that's fine. That's how I want it to look. I'm going to do the same thing here with the bottom. I'm going to press Control U, which lays it out nice and flat, and I'm going to click on Orient Shell, and it resulted in a very similar layout. Now you'll notice that these are not quite matching as far as scale, and we're going to talk about that in a minute, but for right now, it doesn't matter. At this stage in our process, it really doesn't matter if one piece is bigger than the other because we are going to equalize all of these pretty soon. All right, let's move on to this middle portion here, and I find it really helpful to just press Control 1, which isolates it in my viewport, making it just the main focus of what I'm doing. When we first talked about UV maps in class, I compared them to a couple of things. One of them was like a box. If you wanted to collapse a box to throw it away in recycling, you would break the box apart at the seams, or you would, cut it. If not ripping it, cutting it, you would collapse the box at places where it folds. If it were, I know this is a little bit more morbid, but if it were like an animal, let's say you were into taxidermy, then you would also need to lay out the pelt in such a way that it lays flat for tanning, curing, etc. I know, dark. It's a dark comparison, but it does hold true as a pretty good example of what we're doing here. We're taking something that is three-dimensional and we're laying it flat in a 2D space, so it could be wrapped again into that shape if needed, though. So, or the UVs will be wrapping it into that shape actively in the viewport, but we need it to be a two-dimensional image. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look at this. I'm going to think of it like a pizza box. So I'm looking at these corners. These are really obvious. So I'm going to double click. So I've got these three selected. I can go over here and move my view a little and press Shift X, and it will go ahead and cut. Now I might actually do Shift Cut in here as well. Let's double check. So I'm going to grab these and press Shift X, and it doesn't look like Shift X activates in the OpenGL view. So I'm going to go over here and press Shift X, and that time it cut. It's kind of what I suspected. It's a hotkey that really exists in the UV editor. So let's go ahead and click these three, go over here, Shift X, and then go over here, double click, Shift X. All right, looking good. Now, you might have noticed there is a little bit of a mini box kind of down here that we're going to need to address. So I can press, oh, I guess that didn't work. I was kind of hoping spacebar would minimize my UV editor so I have more space. One thing I could do is just double click the UV editor tab to collapse it. All right, so now I'm working mostly in my Maya perspective view. I'm going to click here, press Q because I don't want my move tool activated. Hold down Shift, and then I'll go to the very end and double click the Shift and do it again here. Now, it's not enough that I'm about to cut this box away from the main box, this little mini box, this indentation. I also want to grab the corners, because remember, we're thinking like cardboard, right? We're thinking, how would we flatten this for recycling? So I'm going to grab this corner and this corner, and I'm going to add it to my selection. Now, this selection here is identical to what I would select over here. So I'm going to click off, and before I edit that again, I'm going to activate my symmetry. Now in the past we activated it through the Modeler's Toolkit, but there's actually another way. Right up here at the top of our screen you see the word symmetry. If I click the drop down menu, there's all sorts of symmetry options that exist inside the Modeler's Toolkit. This is just another shortcut toward it. So I think we're on the x-axis. Let's go with world x-axis and see if this works. It looks like it is. Let's experiment. Yes, that is correct. So now we have mirroring on, or not mirroring, sorry, symmetry on. And with symmetry on, I'm going to go ahead and select those same edges again. So I'm going to go click on Q on my keyboard so I don't have the move tool in my way. Hold down Shift, click here, double click to the other side, and click Shift right there. All right, perfect. Let's go for those corners again. Wonderful. If I press 4, I can see the orange edge that I've selected in the 2 corners. And if we go check the other side of our mesh, identical on both sides. Wonderful. So I'm going to double click on my UV editor, or I guess just click it once, and I'm going to press Shift X. Yeah, Shift X. I think that was, didn't take. Let's try again. There it goes. So you'll notice it lights up a little brighter when you've actually made the cut. And now when I click off, everything looks great. Wonderful. I'm going to press Control 1. That's going to bring back our whole crate into view. I can press 5 so I can see everything. And then I'm going to go over here and I'm going to go to my UV shells, select this lid. I'm going to shift, or I'm not going to shift right click. I'm just going to press Control U and unwrap. All right, and so it makes a whole bunch of pieces and they're all kind of cattywampus. So I'm going to click on Orient Shells. And maybe I want these in a little bit of a different order. Maybe I want them arranged differently. If I want to, I could go over to my Transform tool, and you've got the rotate. I can add, it looks like I already have it activated, but if you don't, so I'm just going to review what I'm doing right now. I'm going to collapse, arrange, and layout for right now, and I'm going to go up here to Transform, and I'm going to unspool it. And under Transform, you have your rotate, scale, and we'll talk about textile density in a moment. Under rotate, I have step snap on, set to increments of 15. This is so helpful because if I grab any of these UV shells and I decide that I want to rotate them, I can in nice 15-degree increments. Really helpful. All right, so what I'm going to do before that though is I'm going to just grab all these shells and I'm going to shift right click and I'm going to go to layout. And the reason I'm going to layout as opposed to using the hotkey, which would be Control L, is I want to go ahead and change up my settings that I have in here. So I'm going to reset my settings and see what I have. So layout menu is incredibly powerful and helpful, and the hotkey is too, but you really want to know what you have going on in here before you use the hotkey. Unfold, it's less of an issue unless you're doing something organic and complex. Then you may want to toy with your unfold options, but for something like this, it doesn't really matter. The layout, on the other hand, let's see what we got. So first off, it wants to know our packing resolution. So we're working in textures that are 2K, which means 2048. Ideally, I'd want to work in something like 4096, but I know that on some computers it can be really laggy, and for many of you working from home, I don't want to bog down your machines. So we're just going to go with 2048 for now. Don't worry about packing iterations, multiple objects. We don't want anything overlapping, so that's definitely important. Stack similar. Stacking similar is whenever there is a piece of geometry that is super simple, similar to something else. Like in this case, the front of my crate and the back of my crate shelves are going to be similar. I have the option to stack them. Now that does save space, but the problem with stacking UVs is that whatever you do to one shell will automatically duplicate on the other. That may not matter on something small, but on the Sci-Fi crate, you're going to want to have, you know, the whole surface to draw, paint, make messy, have fun with. So we do not want to stack similar right now. All right, pre-rotation off, pre-scaling, preserve. So I believe, if I remember correctly, it's just going to opt not to rotate shells, which I'm not sure what pre-rotation's about. I may have to look that up. But shell transform settings, this is what I'm thinking. So translate shells means that when I press layout, and I'll just press apply real quick, it's going to move all these pieces down here to the texture space, but it's not going to rotate any of them. So I'm going to press Control Z to undo. Make sure that I have this view clicked because I just undid in my layout window. So I'm going to type in 2048 again. All right, so if I want it to rotate shells though, like it's trying to pack it the best it can by rotating the shells so they fit better, that's definitely an option you could click on. Texture map size, 2048. Padding, this is so important. So shell padding, you want to have like 10 pixel units, and tile padding 10. Me personally, I like to have 10. I think that's a good healthy distance around my shells, because that way they're not like kissing the edge of the tile, nor are they coming too close to each other. It's really important when you're baking maps not to have any overlay. So shell distribution, it's going to distribute in this tile here, the 1-to-1 tile. We can by hand expand on that later because we are going to be doing UDIMs, which I'll talk about in a moment. Full square, allow it to scale. I don't care if it scales right now because we're ultimately not going to keep that scale. And then I can just press apply. It gives it a moment. Now the less things that you change up here, the faster it's going to pack. So this is packing really slowly. And this is what Maya thinks is the best configuration to quickly pack things away. And it's fine. I'm only just showing you this so that you have a feel for what's going on in this view. Me personally, I'm probably not going to have rotate turned on. Scaling I'll probably turn off a little bit later once we've assigned a texel density. Up here, again, I told you I don't really know much about pre-rotation, pre-scaling. You can go ahead and Google those if you'd like. I don't know every single aspect of Maya. Most anybody would confess that they don't. So if there's ever something that you are interested in, something that maybe I haven't played with before, don't stop just because your teacher doesn't know something. Go look it up yourself if that's something you're really interested in knowing how to do. So there's no shame in going outside the bounds of the class. In fact, I would encourage you, if you really love 3D modeling, to check out some of the excellent online resources available. There are just so many great things for free on YouTube. You could use an online service like Gnomon Workshop, and there's just so many great opportunities to learn. It's not disrespectful to keep expanding upon your own learning. So what I'm doing right now is I'm looking at these pieces and I'm just seeing where they are over here. I mostly did that little demo to show you how the layout tool works because it's incredibly useful. If I wanted to lay out something quickly, I would just press Control L. Of course, it's not going to go quickly because I have a bunch of settings in there, but it quickly stacks things into the 1-by-1 space, and we'll utilize it more in a little bit. But for right now, it looks like this is going to be the right side of my crate, at least from where we're standing right now, where we're looking at it in our viewport. This is the other side of that crate. I'm just going to kind of put them in that order over here. Let's see what this is. This looks like it's the inner part of the front of our crate, or what's facing the x-axis. So I'm just going to rotate. Oops. Now you might be wondering what is happening here. I left symmetry on. Very important to turn that off because that symmetry will be activated in virtually any menu that I utilize, not just the open viewport. So move these up. I'm going to move this over here. And here's the front view. Nope, that one goes to... Oops, I got these mixed up. So I'm just kind of organizing these so I know what pieces go where. That's all I'm doing. And there we go. So this piece goes to the far left side. This is to the right side of the crate, at least based on where we're at in the camera view. These are the front and these are the back. Cool. So now we know where these pieces are. We'll worry about packing them later. This is just for knowing what the heck we're looking at. All right, and of course, if we check on these, everything's flipped the right direction and there's no stretching. It's all coming along quite lovely. So let's go ahead and address this last part of the crate. I'm going to go over into this viewport and I'm going to press Control 1. Now, a couple people in the past who've watched me UV map things asked me why I don't use the 3D UV tool. So there's a UV mapping tool that allows you to just cut in this viewport. And I think it's located up here. Is this it? The 3D cut and sew? Yeah, so you could just cut and sew directly on your model. Yeah, no, that's totally cool. You absolutely may use that tool. I'm just so old school at this point. This is how I've done it for so long that this is quicker for me. So this is why I go about it. Everybody models things differently. Don't think your teacher's way is the only way to do something. Do what's best by you, and again, explore the tools. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and press on Shift X again, and that's going to cause this to cut. Excellent. Go over here, do it again. You know, these corners are really obvious, so I could just go through and just grab these corners real quick. 1, 2, oops, hold on a second. Yeah, sorry, it got away from me a little bit. 1, 2, and 3. Go over here, hold down Shift X, and now they are all nice and cut. Wonderful. So there are some areas inside here that we're going to have to address. So let's go ahead and take a look at those. Very much the way that we took care of the lid, we're going to have to take care of these inner little boxes over here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that symmetry mirror tool, and I believe we were in the x-axis. And yep, from what I'm highlighting, I can see it highlighting on the other side. Wonderful. Let's go ahead and do this. So I'm going to go here, press Q because I don't want to activate the move tool. Double click. Well, it helps if you hold down Shift. Shift, double click. So click here, Shift, double click, and that will select everything in between those two areas you clicked. Hold down Shift, double click over to this end, and it grabs everything in between. Do that again here, Shift, and double click. All right, now I'm going to go in and grab this corner, and I'm going to grab this corner, go over here, and press Shift X. And as you can see, it creates a beautiful cut on both sides of our UVs. Lovely. All right, now we just got to do the same cuts up here on this smaller box, okay? So I'm going to click here, hold down Shift, click there, Shift, double click, Shift, click, 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 and click. Now I want to make sure that I've got these inner seams selected. Don't need all of them, I just need the ones that are bending with corners so that they lay flat. All right, and then I'm going to go over here and press Shift X, and ta-da, everything's nice and cut. So I can go ahead and grab these UV shells, select them, and press Control U to unfold them. Looks like a hot mess of pieces. Let's go ahead and go to our UV toolkit. Close this window, go to Arrange and Layout, and ask it to orient shells. Okay, so let's see what we have here. I could go ahead and pack these. I don't want to pack them. Let's see what we're dealing with. Let's go ahead and press Control 1. So I say why you would want to pack things is oftentimes when you pack things, you have everything spread out, but that's okay. Let's just deal with what we have. So it looks like this is the wall on the other side, so I'm going to rotate it because the little dither at the bottom indicates the bottom of the crate. And I could go ahead and scale this up so it matches a little bit more there. Again, it's not going to matter in the long run because we're going to be rescaling all of these in another step. So next, let's go ahead and see what this piece is. Okay, so this piece is like along with the front of the crate here. So I'll just grab this and move it up. Looky there, I forgot. Turn off that symmetry tool, very important. Let's grab this piece here and move it over here for now. This is the little piece that hangs out in there. We're not going to be able to pack it in there because it won't fit without shrinking it. And if we shrink it, well, it's going to have less texture space. And we're going to talk about that. And then this is the bottom part, and it can just go here. You can just put that there. So there's everything nice and tidy. We can scale it up so it matches a little bit more with the other pieces. And again, that doesn't matter. It's just something I like to do so I know where everything is. All right, let's grab this side. I'm going to rotate it. Go ahead and scale this up a bit. Okay, let's go over here and grab this, the front of this crate over here. Looks like it could be oriented better. There we go. You can click orient more than once. If it still feels a little crooked, you can always go in and click it again. Not a problem. So I'm just going to scale that up a little bit. Oops! Accidentally grabbed vertex instead of the UV shell mode. Easily remedied. There we go. Rotate that way. Maybe orient again. Make sure it's nice and straight. Scale it up. Again, none of this really matters. I'm just doing it for myself. Oh, I made that way too big, evidently. There we go, close enough. Oh wait, no, because that wouldn't fit in there. That's what the issue was. Whoops, silly me. Again, not a huge deal because this does not actually matter. I'm just doing that for me. All right, and then move this here, and there we go. We've got the pieces all laid out on our crate. And the next step will be to pack these, and that's what we'll do in the next tutorial. But for right now, if we turn on these checker boxes, everything is looking really nice. Obviously, some boxes have some areas have little tiny boxes, some of them have bigger boxes. We're going to need to address that. Look at this one, it's huge. But the important thing is that we are not dealing with stretching. So if we click this and we activate the distortion map, everything is coming up solid white. That is great. And of course, nothing is flipped the wrong way. Everything is coming up blue. So in our next tutorial, we are going to pack the crate and then move on to the other aspects that need to be mapped.